I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Trish.
Mrs. Brew?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mr. Meneghini?
Here.
Mr. Oja?
Here.
Mr. Pop?
Here.
We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a support?
I'll support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Meneghini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. Anyone wishing to address the council on an agenda item shall do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the record. If none, we'll move on to, we have no public hearing. We'll move on to appointments and presentations. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are calling a special meeting tonight to hear a presentation from Ryan Susi from QPAD, works for the Central Upper Peninsula Planning Agency, and he's going to give us a presentation on the MEDC Redevelopment Ready Community Program. So, Ryan, why don't I just turn it right over to you?
Sure thing. Yeah, it's going to take me just a minute to put it back up, but in the meantime, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Ryan Susi. I'm with the Central UP Planning Development Community Planner, and QPAD is the acronym. We are a regional council of government that works with communities in the 6-county Central UP region to help with community planning, economic development, recreation planning, lots of different things like that, mapping projects and things like that. And so I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit today about the Redevelopment Ready Communities Program, Lake Rate Agenda, and particularly 3 aspects of that the city is looking to, the city and township jointly are looking to potentially make some progress on here. And so, I'll just put my presentation cleared up. Bear with me. Okay, so it looks like it works. So we'll probably be the best spot to stand here, over here. All right, so I titled this presentation, "Let's Get Ready for Redevelopment," because that's what we're hoping to accomplish here in the next, over the next year or two. And so this, All right, so this Redevelopment Ready Communities Program, this is a relatively new program from the MEDC, at least for the Upper Peninsula. We certainly get a lot more communities involved in this. Right now, I would say they probably have about 20 certified communities through this Redevelopment Ready Communities Program, one in the Upper Peninsula, and that's the city of Escanaba. But we're hoping to see a lot more that are getting more engaged in this program and getting certified through it. And so what's the big deal with this program? Well, what this program is, it's for looking at the plans, the ordinances, and the development review processes to make sure we're ready for redevelopment. When a developer does decide to come in, do we have all of our ducks in a row? And so it's a really great best practices program. A lot of requirements from this program are taken directly from the state acts, the Planning Enabling Act, the Zoning Enabling Act, and put into this program, because there is no planning and zoning police out there that are going to come into your community and check and see if you've put all of these processes into place that the Planning Act say. But this is how the MEDC kind of uses a carrot on a stick for communities. So by engaging in these programs and working through this process, you might become eligible for grants in the future through the MEDC, things like community development block grants, facade improvement grants, public spaces, community places, which is a really cool new program. It's like a Kickstarter type community development grant program. brownfield, TIF, things like that. Those are all made eligible to communities that are participating in this redevelopment ready communities program. So enough on that. It contains these modules within it that focus. The first module is focusing on the plans. So there's a number of plans that get reviewed through this. Number one is the master plan. Two, you have a downtown plan, which you guys, I just noticed you guys had some update to that, and that was really cool to see. There's also a capital improvements plan, which is commonly referred to as the CIP, and that's a 6-year plan that is sort of the glue between the master plan and the annual budget, and how we get from that master plan, the big things and aspirations that are within that, down to the annual, how do we pay for that. And finally, there's a public participation strategy, which is also a type of plan that's not really defined in any legislation, but it's really a best practice for how we engage with the public in our communities, and how we bring in a lot of input when we're developing these other plans. So I just wanted to say that each of these documents and processes that go into them are all really interrelated, right? Because we have, the master plan describes this long-range vision of all the things that we want to see accomplished in the community, all the types of infrastructure and investments that we want to see. The capital improvements plan tells us, how much money we might need to be saving over the years, or how much this long-range thing might need to, how much it might cost. Imagine, we have sewer and roads, and we have, maybe a sewer that is 7 years from the end of its life, and we have a road that's 5 years toward the end of its life, and that sewer is below it, but how do we stage these capital investments so we're not, ripping up the road twice so we can repair the water and then pave it again? How do we coordinate those things so we can save taxpayers money? That's important, and all of these plans really relate to each other. So starting with that public participation element, though, it's really a fundamental tool in all of the development of plans and working with the community. All community planning processes should contain a significant component of that public participation, especially with the master plan. So what does public participation look like in Norway? How much feedback do you guys usually get when you reach out to the community? Is it fairly good? Is it, you wish you had more?
Wish we had more.
Yeah. What kind of methods do you guys typically use when you're trying to get feedback? A lot of communities are using social media these days with some pretty good amount of success.
Mostly our meetings.
Meetings, so the typical standard following Open Meetings Act and the like. Well, I think we can do quite a bit better too once we get around to developing this really cool public participation plan that can give us some examples of things that we can use and what instances we want to use them, and tells us about what important stakeholder groups are out there that we can reach out to, so we're not constantly reinventing the wheel, and able to get a lot more feedback, and people know how we're trying to reach out to them, what methods they might look out for. If they get a postcard in the mail or something like that, that they know that's something official from the city of Norway area, so we can get them out to our meetings. So those are all really good ideas. So here's an example. This is a little bit of a hard graphic to read here because it's not too focused, but I stole this from the Michigan Association of Planning. This is the ideal way to prepare a master plan. So step one, we review the master plan and decide if we want to amend it or prepare a new plan. I think the amending is the direction we're going to go eventually here in the future. But that next step is to identify stakeholders and get organized. So if we have an established public participation plan, we already know who those stakeholders are, and we don't really have to work on getting too organized because we already have that infrastructure in place. Next step is assessing this existing conditions, and then step 4 is identifying community issues by gathering public input. And that public participation plan already gives us a lot of the framework for doing that. Next, we draft goals, we adopt a plan, and hey, look, there's another element of public participation there where the public comment and review. So we would use, again, that public participation plan. And then the next step, final step, is implementation, where we work with the public to promote and engage them and bring them into the process of how we implement a lot of the policies that are within that plan. So you can see how a really good, robust public participation plan sets you up very well for doing a lot of these processes here. The next thing I'm going to tell you about is this capital improvements plan. And not a whole lot of communities in Michigan do this the way that the statute says that it should be done. And that's important to get it right, because having an RRC-approved public or capital improvements plan could be a requirement for grants in the future, kind of like the infrastructure capacity enhancement grant they had last year. There could be a lot more of those types of grants in the future. We really see a lot of the federal and state conversation really moving toward a lot of infrastructure, asset management types of things. So I highlighted this graphic here at the bottom. This is a capital improvement plan that I worked on with the city of Negaunee this year. Actually, we're adopting it this Thursday, and this is a really cool tool that the city council is going to have as they walk into their budget season this year. They're going to have this 6-year document here that connects between their master plan and their annual budget. As they are looking at their annual budget, they can see 6 years out into the future on the types of things that their department heads are going to be needing public improvement-wise. So it's a multi-year planning tool, and it connects to that master plan and annual budget, but it doesn't have, it doesn't hold the city council to making those purchases that are described in it. It's kind of just a long-range view that tells us what could potentially be and why what we should be considering. So again, I mentioned it's a legal requirement for most cities, villages, or for cities, villages, and some townships, those townships that have public water and sewer system. Any questions on any of this? You guys are free to ask questions as I'm going along here or something. Do you have a question from anyone?
Just, I just want to, one of the reasons we're having this format is that we have a combined planning commission with the Norway Township, so the city and the township. And there are components of this that, like the master plan update, that we need to be we're going to work together on. There may be components that, like the DDA plan, which is totally the city. The capital improvements plan, the township's going to have to go back and discuss their, how much are they comfortable with and what parts they might be looking forward to. But then we have also invited the other boards and committees that we have, so members of the DDA, Planning Commission, and Parks and Rec. So I think, feel free to ask questions, because that's definitely what I wanted to try and do was make sure that we get the information to everybody and get a good feedback, so we're not stumbling as we go forward trying to move forward with some of these, because there are costs involved, and we want to make sure we're transparent and everybody is on the same page.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And working together with boards and committees and various department heads is really important in developing this capital improvement plan, and of course all those other plans I mentioned. Really, being able to approach this together, you could potentially reduce a lot of your costs on developing a plan like this, and you realize, hey, it would be really nice to have a tool like a CIP to guide us here in the future. So,
Ryan, I can't read that. You talked about the county capital improvement plan. Did they prioritize that? And what was one of the priorities on that one?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Yeah, so a lot of their priorities there that were at the top were downtown development type opportunities for enhancing their streetscape, investing in their downtown park that they have, the Jackson Line Park. A lot of the others were roads, typical infrastructure type activities. There was a wastewater, emergency wastewater repair that they had to slide in there real quick into their CIP that they didn't really foresee coming. Vehicle purchases were included in that. And so it was a pretty good mix of stuff, but they definitely, I worked with the policy committee that we formed there to develop a criteria for a rating that was dependent on an economic development factor along, and there's an element of public participation in there that the community actually came in and told us what they valued for long-range planning. That was incorporated into the scoring criteria. So it was a pretty, it was a very thorough process actually coming up with that and how the projects ended up shaking out.
As we're working with the township, working with the city of Norway, could we have a much different capital improvement plan in the township than that plan that was in the city? Would it be dramatically different? Or they have to be tied together?
Well, I could see it as being a combined process on working through that, but we could structure it in a way that the township could sort of be separated out. Like, you wouldn't want to see your projects mixed in with the city's projects. That would be probably a little bit more difficult to read. But yeah, I think if we were all sitting in the same sections together, we could do it as a side-by-side process and make it look like that in the document itself. So that would be more helpful and readable probably for both of the respective boards. Okay, so what does that planning enabling act say? Because that's the statute that really tells us about how to develop a CIP. And it's very brief and very vague. So these are the key points, though, that it talks about. So after adoption of that master plan, the Planning Commission shall annually prepare a CIP of public structures and improvements unless exempted. So there's the ability that the township board or the city council can exempt the planning commission from doing that. The only reason that something like that would happen is if the planning commission is very green and they don't really have the time or the capacity to be able to work with through the process of developing that capital improvements plan. Annually preparing, that just means re-looking at that CIP every year and updating it to make sure that were there new projects that any of these public projects get accomplished, and then taking those off of the list. So the first year is really the most substantial part of developing the CIP and putting it together, and then every year after that it's a very short process of just updating that. The next bullet says improvements that are necessary or desirable in the planning commission's judgment can be undertaken in the ensuing 6 years. So that's the next year's capital budget year, plus 5 years after that is the window of time that we're looking at for things that might be public improvements. And it's based on the requirements of a local unit of government for all types of public structures. So all the types of public structures that you could be invested in, but we would set a threshold for that. So if you didn't want to count any type of capital improvement that was less than, say, $4,000, so we're not collecting every little tiny thing and including it in that list. We're only looking at the big, really substantial things. We can make that own definition. We can make our own definition for that, and I would work with the policy committee to understand what that is in Norway. Each agency or department shall furnish list plans and estimates of time and cost. So that's where I work with department heads and the city manager and township superintendent to talk about when these things might happen. And I have project forms that make it really easy for everyone to submit their projects into this document. There's no penalties or enforcement, but like I mentioned before, there are incentives for having that up-to-date CIP, which could be potentially grant money in the future. And it's only a requirement for those townships that have water sewage disposal system. So here's an example of how I work with the city of New Hampshire here. We started out by providing an introduction to the CIP and explained the roles of all the department heads, the governing body, and the planning commission. We developed this public engagement process that I think worked out really well. It's not a requirement of it, but it really is a lot better than just having that public hearing at the end, because public hearings don't really, cultivate a bunch of good public input from it. They're just kind of a very short, and I don't know, it doesn't cultivate a whole lot of information out of it. So we have a call for projects that comes the month after that, where we work with department heads to the project plan. Then we work with the policy team to score and rank those projects through that process we develop. Then we go back to drafting the CIP, we're working with the city manager and board. And then the planning commission would end up adopting that, and the city council would review that and also adopt it. And so since we have a joint board, the joint board would approve it, and then the two respective boards, legislative bodies, would adopt those. And like I said, the public hearing, I would opt for a more robust process at the beginning of that to get that public input. It's not required by the act to have a public hearing to adopt the capital improvements plan. So it's just kind of an afterthought on this. So this is what public engagement looks like when you do it in a really robust way. So we sent out these really nice postcards to everybody in the city. We used the electrical billing mailing list to send out to every address in the community. Postcards, 35 cents, so that's a really cheap way of getting in touch with everybody. And we had a pretty good turnout for it at that meeting. There was a lot of very good input. The public was able to tell us what kind of capital improvements they wanted to see, and then gave us some feedback on the main kind of criteria that they wanted to see projects rated against. Any questions on anything here? Here's an example of a CIP request form that I give to a department head, so they just specify all of their basic information, project number, project name, the type of project that it is, what their feeling on the priority of that is, expected useful lifespan of that, a short description of it, the justification, the expenditure schedule over the next 6 years, and where they expect that funding source to come from. So pretty basic stuff that gets plugged into the software that I use, and it spits out a really very nice readable report. So that product that we would see would be these reports interspersed with some good plain language that describe a lot of the things that are going on that we expect to be doing. So by the time the city council or the township board gets it, it's a really helpful document that they can cross-reference how much the project costs, what it expects to happen, and what it is, and how it relates to other projects. So here's kind of what it looks like. It's super hard to read here, but it sort of over here, it's organized by department. So we have years 2019, 2020, 2021, all the way up to 24. You'll see the name of the project here, and if this was a more complete report that I had, it would tell you what the funding source potentially is of each of these reviews here. So pretty handy. Okay, so I told you about public participation, I told you about capital improvements. Now I'm going to sort of move on to the master plan here, unless anybody wants me to slow down. Okay. So I think the last plan that you had was adopted, I want to say 5.5 years ago or so now, almost 6 years. So we're coming up on the statutory time for at least reviewing that plan to determine if an update is needed, or if it's good, or if a rewrite needs to happen. So I've actually already taken the step of reviewing your master plan against that redevelopment ready communities criteria, and looked at the data sources to see if any of those have to be done. And I found a few areas where it looks like it should be updated, and definitely if you want to have an RRC approved master plan, a couple of items that do need to be updated. So we have that information already. Step 2, I would recommend the planning commissions take this annual report template. Did everybody get a copy of that template that I have? Okay, well, if you don't have a copy of that, I have it electronically. That's the easiest way to fill it out. It's probably about 3 pages worth of questions that you just walk through, and by the time you're done answering those questions, that tells you whether or not, or what items that you need to see, or that you'd like to see included in an update. So I said a resolution here is step 3. It doesn't have to be a resolution. It can just be a board action that's included in the minutes. Expressing your desire to amend the plan based on all of those things that we mentioned before, the findings of the annual report and the things that I've included in that review that I can share with you. And so that sort of tells you that it's time to update the management plan. So here's a hard-to-read picture of the annual report. Just has who's on the committee, when they expire, your meeting schedule, questions about the master plan review, questions that you, about zoning ordinance, and issues that you've had with that throughout the year, if there's been anything. Finally, what's required in a master plan update? Well, in a master plan, it has to have a land use plan in it, and it has to have a zoning plan. And so that zoning plan is the tool that really relates the master plan to what's going on in the zoning ordinance. It describes those districts, the height, bulk, character of the community or the neighborhood. Things like that are all included in the zoning plan and give us the rationale for why we have the zoning districts. It also includes recommendations for infrastructure, areas to be redeveloped, and implementing any other proposals. Maybe a big park on the horizon that you want to be expanding or something. So then, relating back to redevelopment, ready communities, there's also a public participation framework that should be included in that. Relation to the downtown plan, and you guys have a separate downtown plan, but just relating it to it and acknowledging some of the items that are included in that new plan. I had started on that capital improvements plan, putting in an economic development strategy, and also these tools for annually reporting progress. And I'm handing you one right now with this annual report template, and that'll satisfy something for RRC right off the bat. So that's really all I got. I know it's kind of a flood of information there, but I'm sort of here to work with you guys along the way. If you have any questions or something comes up later, I'm always around. You guys can use my contact information and get hold of me.
Thank you, Ryan.
Welcome.
Any questions?
If you guys had any questions, or we're going to be bringing this through, we're going to be bringing this through with the Planning Commission and the other boards as we go through. And then I did give you, at the last Planning Commission meeting, there was a series of proposals. So and I have them in our attachments. So those are something that we'll have to review. You know, one thing that I mentioned to Ryan is that, and he asked the question early on was, what is our public participation? And, we've been struggling for a number of years to get people out. And so my recommendation was, why don't we start with that? Get a good framework for how are we going to get people out? Because it's no sense starting a master plan if we don't know how we're going to get the public to participate. And then I was looking at the six-month time frame. I'm sure we have room to work within that 6 months, but like on the capital improvements, we're all going to have to do that anyway in some shape or form for our budget. So we could work on those.
That's what I was thinking with that, that pretty much matches our projected budget.
Yeah, so, I mean, and then the last component would be, or at least the initial talk, once we have those kind of laid out, is what do you want to participate in the township? What is the city? What do we do together? What do we do separate? I think that we could easily develop a roadmap right off the bat. One question I know that was raised before is well, what does this really benefit? I mean, other than we have a joint planning commission and that, as far as planning and zoning and with our master plan, the township and the city have different needs. And so for us, we have or for the city, we have, maybe more opportunities in some of the CDBG grant opportunities, but yet, what about these special places grants? Because I've been seeing the last 20 projects, I mean, there were quite a few small township areas that had beautification projects, parks. Would those be tied in to this redevelopment ready community?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking, going back to public participation, the township and the city both absolutely use these public participation plans. They're not exclusive to only one. I mean, people don't really, care if I live on one side of the street or I live on the other side. I mean, people are all reached in the same ways when you're in such a tight-knit community,
right,
like the Norway area. I mean, we all go to the same grocery stores and we all, use the same news sources, and a lot of us go to the same schools and things like that. So, I mean, it can be definitely wielded by both both sides of that. And for like public spaces, community places, that's all about reaching out to people in the community. It's a Kickstarter-like program, crowdsourcing, if you're familiar with it, where you propose a project and you ask people to donate to it. It can be anywhere from $1 to $500. And if you meet your goal, then the MEDC matches that 1-to-1. And that's really cool because you can fund something pretty quickly that way without having to tap too much into your community's budget. So absolutely, I can see that. Yeah.
So we have a planning commission meeting on Wednesday night. So we'll probably we will be bringing this back just for discussion, so.
One thing I forgot to touch on too, I just want to throw out one more thing about this public participation, is getting the youth involved in community development. I think that's one area where all across the UP we need to work a little bit harder on that, because our youth population is declining here in the Upper Peninsula, and we want to see our kids moving back to the community. And by reaching out to them and asking them what they want to see in the development of our communities is critically important to building good memories of our places and having a good place for them to eventually move back to when they do build their own families. So just throwing that out there. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I can adjourn that. I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Ray, do you want me to pause it or stop it?
Are you going to go right into, regular meeting? Yeah. We're going to go right into regular meeting.
But I have the agenda.
We got to stand for the pledge again, right? I guess it don't matter.
Go ahead.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call, Trish.
Mrs. Brew?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Here.
Mr. Pop?
Here.
Has everybody got the revised agenda on? I need a motion on the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion, we approve the agenda. Support.
Is that Pop or Kramer?
Scott.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 17, 2018. Is there any questions on the minutes? If not, I need a motion on the minutes.
I'll make a motion, we approve minutes of the regular meeting of September 17th, 2018.
Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
We'll move on to the approval of manifest 2018-19. Scott, do you have any questions?
I have nothing for tonight.
Brett?
I have none.
Lee?
Nothing.
Jeremy? I have none either. I would need a motion on the manifest.
I'll make a motion, we approve manifest number 2018-19 in the amount of $319,939.90.
Support.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Anyone wishing to address the council on any agenda items shall do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the record. Comments shall be limited to 5 minutes per person. If none, we'll move on to the public hearing. Traffic control order one-way 4th Avenue. Mr. Anderson.
We're going to go to motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Need a motion to go into public hearing.
I'll make a motion to go into public hearing. Support.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
No. Traffic control order one-way designation 4th Avenue. Mr. Anderson.
Okay, thank you. We, the city and the school entered into conversations this past year on general school safety. And there's a couple different components that we talked about. One was on school security, mainly, but that would be inside the school and maybe directly right on the grounds. And then the second component was, of course, the traffic control, traffic movements, pedestrian movements around the streets, around the school. And tonight what we've, the committee, in looking at the traffic patterns, one thing that was done is that the buses were moved all onto 4th Avenue. There was, I think, a combination in the past where there were buses being, letting kids off on the back side of the school and on 4th Avenue. I know when the original design, in the original design, or at least when the auditorium was constructed, there was some street work done. Originally, we were looking at Section Street, and then between the city school and city communications, we said, hey, you know, I think maybe 4th Avenue was a better location for having that wider street and having buses like out by the playground and the auditorium, and that's how that street was constructed. Over the years, I think there's been a combination of buses going in the front and the back, and so this year, through the work of the committee, the school had opted to have all the buses come out onto 4th Avenue. In doing so, one of the areas of our concern was traffic pattern on that one section block of 4th Avenue. So we decided to send back to the city recommendation to hold a public hearing to have a conversation about the possibility of making that one block of 4th Avenue one way. It would go eastbound, traveling from Section Street to 4th Avenue. So at that point, at this point, then it's basically just a discussion point, and I'm going to step back.
Okay. Do we have anybody that would like to approach the podium and give their opinion on the one-way? That's why we're having this hearing tonight, so if anybody has anything to say, you can do so now.
Terry Beckman, W4744 South Spruce Street in Vulcan, Michigan. I'm a bus driver for the school district for Roshan Busing. And seems like we talk about safety, you know, bus drivers bring their kids to school safely, bring them home safely, and we want to keep doing it. But I don't understand why they want to make it one way on 4th Avenue going eastbound. Because of the fact is that this year we started a new program picking up by the auditorium, and we drop off by the auditorium. If anybody knows more about the busing, is the bus driver. But nobody seems to ask the bus driver. Nobody seems to care about the bus driver. And I'm saying that because the fact is that 2 years ago, Ray, it didn't happen just the last year, but 2 years ago when Brad Grable was here, I made the suggestion and he said it was all taken care of. And Brad Grable is gone, I'm still driving. So I'd like to say, we have a problem. All the buses come eastbound into the school in the morning from Section Street and Main Street on 4th Avenue. Bus 6 comes in, I come in, and bus 2 comes in from Choice Transportation. The other 2 buses, one from Fairlawn, comes in on Section Street north, out of Forest Drive, and then comes in front of the school by the auditorium. Then the other bus comes down Section Street from the north off the highway, because he comes from 7th Avenue, picks up them kids and comes into the school. And they all drop off with the door to the right side, so everybody can get off and get to school without crossing. Problem we have is parking. Everybody seems to be driving their kids to school, and I know they got to give them a kiss. I understand that. They bring them to the schoolyard, they let them in, and stuff like that, but they park right where it says, no parking. Bus drop-off. Buses loading and unloading students. What do we got? A safety hazard. Because people come in, we expect to drive in. I had drivers sit there and blow the horn at people so they can move. Our bus drivers, blowing the horn at them. And they shouldn't be doing it, I understand that. But people can't read. Ain't your fault, ain't my fault. I went to school in Norway, I can read. Problem is parking there by the auditorium. They should not be parking there. Only in the morning. 7:30, the first bus comes, and that's Terry back. First bus, 7:30. Problem is, a lot of time, you can talk about one way there, but I suggested to Brad Grable back then, 2 years ago, the problem is, everybody coming off the highway, coming down on Chestnut Street, that should be a one-way. Going out on Walnut Street, that should be a one-way. Very simple. But maybe for the city, if they look at it, maybe we could do that. We don't go through the schoolyard anymore. We don't pick up on that south side of the school. And we can't go between all the cars that are parked in the way. Because there's no parking signs on the south side of the school. But people park there. They line up their cars, pick up their kids on the south side and the north side. So it causes a problem with the buses. I know it's only an hour a day in the morning, and it's an hour at night. After 3 o'clock, from 3 to 3:20, that's the big key time. But problem is parking. We have parking, people are parking trucks, trailers on the street. Go down Walnut Street, I'll guarantee you gotta fit between a gray trailer and a gray truck. 1 inch on each side of the street. If that was one way going out to the Quick Mart, you wouldn't have any problem, because everybody would be parking on the west side of that street, going out. You'd have 2 lanes on this side, no problem. Same thing when coming down on Chestnut Street, everybody would be parking on the east side of Chestnut. Everybody would be driving into the school this way. Very simple. Going around the school, they can go out the other way. And that's fine. No buses can go through it, or shouldn't go through it. So all I'm asking is that we need to really be safe, and we gotta make sure that before we make a decision to make it a one-way, buses still gotta come back. I mean, when I leave the school in the morning after I drop off, I gotta bring kids over to Holy Spirit School. So I just go over to Walnut, come back on 5th, come back on Chestnut, and back on 4th, all the way over to Holy Spirit, away I go. So I just want to say that the bus drivers say parking is the problem more than being a one-way street. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Anybody else?
Good evening, Bill O'Brien, West 5716 Warner Lane. I'm not a traffic engineer and I don't know what the best answer is. I appreciate the comments of bus driver Terry Backlund, because obviously he spends a lot of time thinking about it. What I do want to say is that I appreciate all the time and energy of the committee and the council of thinking about safety and the children, whether it's in the school or on the streets or on the buses. I think the interaction between the school district and the city is wonderful, and when we get more people talking, we get better safety, better solutions, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Anyone else?
Hi, Rico Meneghini, 123 East 9th Avenue, Norway, Michigan. I am also the transportation director at the school. The main safety issue, I guess, that I have as a transportation director / principal was what was happening through the school parking lot. With the change of the bus drop-off and pickup locations, that has cut down my concerns when it comes to the bus-vehicle interaction quite a bit. I know it's not a perfect system, but I think, kind of echoing what Terry said, I think it's a big improvement, and the need to turn 4th Avenue into a one-way, in my opinion, is not something that's needed at this point.
Thank you, Rico.
Thank you, Rico. Did you want to read losing now or no?
We can if you want.
It's up to you, doesn't it?
Nothing.
All right. Anyone else? Any comments from the council?
We got someone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi guys, Regine Schultz, 402 Sexton Street, right on the corner. You have a major problem, and I agree with your bus driver. I see it every day. I moved there 8 years ago, it wasn't so bad. It's gotten a lot worse. I'm a little nervous, excuse me. The problem is the parking, the people in the morning, the yellow line. The problem is your adult drivers that don't follow the simple rules that go around that school. I think a lot more tickets need to happen. I think if you were to crack down a little bit on some of these problem drivers, that would help a lot. A one-way is really not what you need there. It's the parking. One of your issues you should be a little bit worried about is your mopeds going around there, double riders. I had one come down the hill the other day. I got a big guy on this little tiny moped wearing a helmet. The girl on the back. Oh, we gotta come to a stop sign. Oh, we're gonna fling our hair. Oh, there goes the bike. I see it every day. I picked up a young girl off a moped. Why? Because she was flinging her hair and couldn't see out her helmet because she hit the curb. It's your adult drivers. I believe our police department needs to stick up a little bit or step up a little bit and start ticketing some of these people. Slow down that traffic. Make it a 5 mile an hour instead of hit the stop sign and by the time you're at the top of the hill, you're 50 miles per hour. Come on. And that's in the morning. That's at 10:30, 11 o'clock when they come down the hill to go to Iron Mountain. That's at noontime. I have sat there to try to get out of my driveway, noon, 3 o'clock, prime time, where seriously, I'll back out on you now because you are just rude. It's the drivers, they won't even let you out. It's the kids, it's the parents, it's the parking. It doesn't need to be a one-way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any council comments?
Well, I would just like to say that I am a member of that committee, and when we talked about this one way, it was in the early talks before the buses were moved to pick up outside. There was a mess. There's a very big mess inside that school parking lot. when the buses and cars and kids are running all over the place. I do see issues, I also live on that corner too, and I do see some issues there that need to be taken care of. I personally, after watching a lot of the way things have been going, I don't think that needs to be a one-way either, but we just wanted to get it on public hearing and discussion to see what the public has to say. That's all.
Scott, didn't we, as part of the conversation, I think one of the concerns was not the buses, but the people parking on the other side.
Yes.
The kids running across Fourth Avenue, coming from the playground, they're not gonna go to the bus, they're going to their parents' car, and the idea was, we were nervous about the two-way traffic, and that's
Yes.
really what it was.
And that's
was
where,
coming from.
Mr. Menegini and I were talking,
Yeah.
that right now, it's not an issue. The weather's still decent, but once winter months come, that's what I'm a little concerned about, because these little fellas, they're gonna be running through the buses. I mean, bus drivers, you know it, you do see that. The kids bolting in between your buses, trying to get across the street to their mom or dad's car, and they don't pay attention, they just run. And that was one of the discussions that we had with that.
And we got the same concern on Section Street.
Yeah.
Maybe even more. I mean, there's a lot of parking that goes on that street as well. Question, Jim, do we have a traffic control order for parking on Fourth Avenue?
No, we do not.
Yeah, so we can't ticket, because we don't have a traffic control order.
The signs are there basically put as a suggestion. There is actually no traffic control order in our ordinances regarding parking on Fourth Avenue.
So we would have to have traffic control order for no parking in order to issue a ticket. Yep.
And what's the state of that? What do we gotta do for that?
It's just it's a council resolution.
Okay.
Yeah. We decide and we do a council resolution.
Well, I too was on this committee, and I could see both sides of the coin, but this is why we have these public hearings, so the people can come out and voice their opinions and give us different thoughts and prospects that we haven't looked at. Like, sorry, Tara, but I never thought about the bus driver. But that's why we have these meetings, so we can get input from the public.
I think some of this too, though, can be a good education opportunity with the children. If they're gonna go across, that's why you use the intersection, the crosswalk, have a crossing guard there. Try to funnel everyone, instead of running between the buses, get them to go down to the corner. It's not gonna be perfect, but at least then you're putting everything in a controlled area. Plus, like I say, like it's been said, I think the disruption in traffic in this is gonna be greater, it's gonna cause more issues with people going the wrong way on it regularly. Plus, we look at things like, a couple years ago, we changed the ATV ordinance by the school, so that people over on, because of request of somebody on Walnut. Now, if this was a one-way, they would have to go to Railroad to get back to Walnut, so you're crossing the highway twice for anybody over there with an ATV trying to get anywhere.
I happen to agree with everything everybody said here. I wasn't part of the committee, but I want to thank everybody who was on the committee. It's nice with the school and the city council working together. And the main purpose tonight was to get people out for, get their public comment. And Terry, I apologize to you too, because we should have called the bus drivers. Maybe you guys should have been part of the committee. And, and the citizens, that's great, Gene, that you came out and said, you're living on that corner. We're not, we can go by and check it out every once in a while, but you're living there, so you see what's going on. So at this time, I don't think we're gonna do anything with it. Does my council agree on that?
We should maybe look at getting like.
But the ordinance, we may,
Traffic
look
control.
into ordinance.
Yeah.
Is the council agreeable on that they would like
Definitely.
to look at an ordinance for?
Yeah, 'cause I do see a lot of cars parked there, and the bus is actually on the side of the car, waiting for that car. Well, if there's a program going on, they don't come out of there until after the kids are picked up, so they keep their cars parked there. So that is an issue.
So do we want to look at that one block but on Fourth Avenue for a traffic control order, both sides, or what specifically do you want us to focus on with the traffic control order? Or do you want us to go back and come back with a recommendation? I mean, it's basically that one block, right? The Fourth Avenue?
No parking during school?
Only at certain times though. Because if you go to a football game or a basketball game, they're going to
to be parking on both sides.
Yeah, it would have to be during bus pickup times.
Yes.
That's when the issue is.
No, Mr.
Yeah, I would
Schaefer,
agree.
we talked about, if the one-way was to be certain times, okay, would this be a little bit different situation?
It's a different situation, because you can actually do it from 7 AM to 3 PM, or 7 AM to 3:30, would cover your school hours. It doesn't affect football games, or when, even word to signs to state when school's in session.
Okay.
That's, a parking citation, it falls under a different category as a moving violation. So you have it only one anyway.
Now, if we were to go forward with this, what would your recommendation be, both sides or just the one side?
For the sake of the buses, during school, regular scheduled school hours, I would say both sides of the street, no parking. No stopping, standing, So it promotes your family, your mother, father, to go around to the backside of the school and drop their children off on the backside of the school.
How is that going to affect, though, the...
Yeah.
Right now, it's nice because it's a split. If no one was picking up a kid from the auditorium, that would increase the traffic flow going through the school, which is going to increase issues. And I don't know the exact split, but I would say it has to be at least 20 kids getting picked up by the parents from out there. And then not all those people are parking in the parking lot, very few of them are. But a lot of them are sitting in their car waiting, and that's what Terry's honking at.
But they can go down inside the parking lot.
They could.
And pick the children up there.
That would just take a little bit of education.
Huge parking lot. You'd have them parking, and then they would cross the crosswalks, because the steps are by the crosswalk. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, mid-block crosswalk.
Now, also I had talked about with Mr. Schaefer last week on the phone, on that crosswalk, like how Houghton has in between the lanes, the flashers. Would that be something that we could put in by that crosswalk? Would it be something recommended?
We could do that. I mean, there's different costs for different...
Condition of snow, I was just over in St. Marie this past weekend, and they have them all over in St. Marie, Michigan.
Oh, they do?
They use them.
Okay.
Florence has them on their main street, on the highway.
Just so they know right where that crosswalk is, right in the middle of the road.
I know. Terry, I have a question for you first. Do you think that's going to make a difference of the parking on the opposite side of where you're parking?
Not as much as on the south side by the auditorium.
Bus side is where you want.
The bus side, huh?
And they have, I gotta say, the school has crossing guards right in the middle now. They don't only have them on the corner, they have them in the middle. When the kids come out of school now, they walk them across through the crosswalks. And that's fine, that's great.
So then we're probably okay of leaving it, just letting them park on the opposite side of where the buses
South
are.
side of the street that is. They just park there and wait.
You can even sign it as bus parking only.
Yeah, bus parking only.
During school hours.
That would eliminate the requirement of time and whatever else.
I can tell you, they had those signs in the back of the school where the yellow lines were, and the parents still did not obey it. That's why we could never go.
Right, but the problem is it's on private property.
Yeah, we can't issue a ticket.
We cannot write a citation for parking.
Yeah,
Period. Unless the
That's
school
fine.
has a unless the school has a contract with us to enforce the parking violations on their grounds, we can't do it. The city street is ours. That's a different story.
Couldn't you put yellow lines on the ground lines?
They have them
Where
there.
the bus is
They
supposed to be parked?
They have them there already.
Where the buses park at.
Right where, right on the grounds itself?
They have them on the curb
They
line.
have the curbs, yeah.
Yeah, you can, I mean, that's,
Nobody reads those.
well.
Mr.
In
Dagner?
the wintertime too, you gotta have something you can see.
Would you come up here? If anybody wants to talk, it'd be best if you came up to the podium, so I don't have everybody talking at one time.
That's good.
I'm John Degner, live on 600 Hazen Street. If you put only bus parking only there, you still got a problem with basketball games. So it would have to be bus parking only during certain hours.
During school hours. So then they could still park there.
I think if we get together and we look and communicate about the best proposal, to handle, I think we know the issue. we can come up with something and bring back.
Any other comments from the council?
Well, I think we're all on the same page as the safety of the children. That's the big item.
Yeah, that's the number one priority here. So thank you, everybody, for your comments, and
Thank you.
I need a motion to go back into
I make a motion to go back in regular session.
session.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
We'll move on to appointments and presentations. Do we have that on there?
Yep, we have the Michigan Municipal Liability and Property Pool. There's 2 candidates.
All right.
See what's about that there.
Well, the city of Norway is a member of the Michigan Municipal League's Liability and Property Pool. Each year, they have a certain number of board members that are up for nomination, re-election. We have 2 incumbents that wish to continue on this board. They have a nominating committee, and that committee does recommend that we elect those 2 incumbents. Of course, you could put your name in the hat for that, but you can do a write-in if you choose, or have a write-in if you choose. But we normally go with the nominating committee's recommendation.
Do I have a motion on a nomination?
I'll make a motion that the 2 candidates proposed by the MML's nominating committee be endorsed by the City of Norway City Council.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. We'll move on to approval, Fire Department, Fire Hall HVAC Control System Relays. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We received a request from Fire Chief David Ball. The control system relays need to be replaced in the fire hall. We did, at the time of this writing, we had 1 proposal from Van Oort Electric for $3,750. This morning, I did receive a second proposal from B&B Electric, but it was higher than that amount, about $1,000 higher.
What does he mean here that the system's burnt out? Was it a lightning strike or just
No, it's time.
And how old is that fire department?
It'll be from 2000, so it would be about...
Almost 20 years?
Yeah,
18
almost
years.
18 years. So it's the switching within the controls.
Okay, do I have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion that Van Oort Electric be approved to replace the control system relays in the fire hall for a price not to exceed $3,750.
Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Move on to approval, DPW spare refuse truck parts request.
Okay, this is a request from our shop foreman, Rick Treiber. We're trying to fix the spare garbage truck, number 130. He gave you a list of prices for, or we have 3 quotes for material price, equipment price. The lowest is from Interstate Power Systems for $2,838.05. And he's going to do the work himself. This is just material only and does include shipping.
Do I have any questions? If not, I need a motion.
Yeah, I got a couple questions on that.
All right.
How old is this truck, Ray? Was this the last one that was replaced by the new one we have now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and when do we get our next new one? Was it on a 7-year program, I believe?
3 years?
We're 3 years into it.
3 years into it, okay. So we're gonna need the backup for at least another 4 years, okay. That's, just wanted to get the time right there.
Motion?
I'll make a motion that the Interstate Power Systems be approved for a cost not to exceed $2,838.05.
Support.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
USDA RDWWTP project change order.
We We now have a change order from the contractor. It's actually a deduct of $17,000. Bruce, I don't know if you want to come up and give a report on the change order, but in essence, there was a number of items that we were negotiating through our committee, working with the contractor, and we did settle on a $17,000 deduct. So,
Yes.
I don't know if you want to ask any questions.
I don't have any questions. There was like 9 or 10 items that were out there. Some were pluses, some were minuses, and it took a long time to get contractor involvement to get this resolved, and we finally did. You two guys were party to some of those discussions. So the bottom line is a deduct of $17,000, which will go into contingency, which could go back into a pickup truck column if you want, so.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank Mr. Pop and Mr. Kramer for being involved in this. I know they spent a lot of time with it. In the almost 9 years that I've been here, this is the second time we've ever had a change order where we got money back.
Yeah, and I've said it before, but it's been really a good process having those two guys involved. That's really helped the communication with the council and everybody.
I also would like to thank Scott and Brett for taking the extra time to work on this with everybody.
I'm not sure we're done. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think they can really retire yet.
No.
Maybe a couple more meetings.
All right, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that the city council approve change order number 3 for the wastewater treatment plant project for a deduct of $17,000 on the contractor portion of the project budget.
Support.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Thank you, Bruce. Move on to the approval Sturgeon Falls Hydro Runner Replacement Project Change Order Number 5.
Okay, this is something that came through today, but it's a conversation we had, if you remember back when we were talking about the alignment on unit number 2, there was a comment made by the contractor that the bearing pad and shaft support looked like it needed to be replaced. It didn't look like it was in good condition and doing its job. And so they needed time to look at that and decide what was needed for the replacement. This particular change order is for that replacement. I would have probably held out a couple weeks, however, due to schedule, they'd like to start next Monday, which is probably a week earlier than originally planned in the schedule. And if we wait, they have to do this work first, so if we were to wait 2 weeks, we could lose a week on the schedule. So this is pretty schedule contingent. So the change order is for $19,789, and it's change order number 5 for the project.
Any questions? If not, I need a motion.
I'll make the motion that change order number 5 for the Sturgeon Falls Hydro Runner Replacement Project between the City of Norway and Leaderstro Hydro be approved. You need the figure, actual amount in there? For the 19,000, okay.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Anyone wishing to address the council on any item of interest shall do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the record. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person.
I'm Jesse Fairchild from FDS Engineering. We're in Iron Mountain, 617 North Stevenson, actually. The item of interest is with regard to the hydro. Well, actually, FDS is going to sponsor a senior design project at Michigan Tech. And it's for the Electrical Engineering Technology Department. And when we first talked to that department about doing it, they said, well, give us several examples of projects that you think would be good ones. And the one that they really latched onto was a project to do a black start of a hydro facility. And yours would be a good one to base it on. So I believe this is going to get on the agenda for next meeting, Ray?
Yeah, as we talk about it.
And we did have some in our memo.
Okay, so this was kind of a, here it is, it's out there, I wanted to, introduce it to you so folks could mull over it and think of some questions over the next couple of weeks. It would entail the 8 students in the senior design class or project, whatever, coming down with their instructor. We would share your technological information with it. They would tour the facility and get an idea of how it's designed, and then go back and do a project for the year for black starting, either that exact facility or more in general, depending on how in depth they can get. There isn't really, at the outcome, there isn't a specific deliverable that they can guarantee. It's a senior project and may or may not hit a home run. The original cost for doing a project for sponsoring it, it was $17,000, and we said, whoa, that is way above our budget. So the cost that to sponsor the project is $5,000, and we'd like to share that with you, and if you're not interested, we're probably going to go ahead and do it anyways. But I know it's something we had talked about in the past, and you have a budget for this type of thing, or you may, and I wanted to see if you're interested in helping us out with it. So.
Any other questions for Jesse?
Yeah, Jesse, I read in the memo from Ray there, something about, did we ever have the black start, Ray?
We had a limited black start capability back before the unit was automated. Automated. When we first automated in 2004.
Okay.
The equipment was actually removed. The governors were removed at that time, and I think that's when we lost that capability. I think you had an interesting comment as to why that's not uncommon, because you're selling power to the grid, and if the grid goes out, we're not selling power anyway, so what do you need it?
Most facilities that I work at, that's their intent, yeah.
But since we can produce 90+% of our power, I think that that's something in a long term we should, yes, definitely we should have. If we lose connection to the grid, we can at least, depending on our load, we can at least start our plant and run rolling brownouts anyway. If not, I mean, there are some times when we could probably produce enough for everybody, but at least get rolling brownouts.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I go back a few years longer than most of them here, but in the early 80s, when they had the first big breakdown there, they talked about black start, but nothing was ever done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been around for a long time, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think from a capital improvements planning standpoint, especially longer term, we tend to like to be on an island in some respects. We like to be able to be independent if we have to, and I think because we can generate, if we only could generate 20, 30%, it might be a moot point, but since we can generate up 90+%, I think it's definitely something we should look at.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree too.
I totally agree with that. Does anybody else got questions for Jesse? Are you going to come back, Jesse, when we put it on the?
When would this start? Like the last semester, or?
Well, it's class has started now.
Yeah.
So, we're actually gonna come down, we've talked to Tim, and he said that Fridays are probably better than any other days with the other crews. So we've started sharing information, and they plan to come down and tour on October 19th.
And then it would be a year-long project for them, seniors, so to speak?
Till May.
Yeah, or is school time?
Yep.
Okay.
This won't interrupt with anything else we got going down there.
It really shouldn't, because maybe 1 or 2 visits, when I explained to Tim that we're looking at a few hours, I can guide them, and it's not something where they're gonna be there for days on end.
Okay.
Yeah. So we know we have a lot of contractors and a lot of stuff going on.
And I think this also establishes, or at least starts, a tremendous resource, opportunity. You know, we have just a couple hours north of here, that, especially with our business. You know, so I think that's good for communications and
Yeah.
maybe more in the future.
Yeah, and then like Suki had mentioned earlier, you know, investing in the youth, you know, that are already in UP, we'd like some of them to stay.
Right.
Well, when they see that we actually have, you know, businesses that are sophisticated,
Right.
they will stay.
Right.
Or
Yeah,
could.
that's one of our challenges, and that's really one of the reasons we brought it up, was because we have a hard time getting, you know, new engineers that are interested in staying in the area, so.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
we'll get.
I'll come back next week.
All right.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks.
We'll move on to council comments. Scott?
I just have to say, I believe Lisa Erickson is before the next meeting, correct?
Yes, it's Saturday.
So
It's
please,
this
the community,
Saturday.
come out and enjoy what the fine folks have put on. And also, I'd like to put out to the community, please come to us for the safety of this. Come to somebody in that committee for the safety of the kids around that school and give us your opinions on things. We'd like to really look after those kids. That's all.
Brett?
I'd like to thank everybody that came out in public session tonight. Without them, yeah, you kind of get stumped sometimes, or you may go down the wrong road, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Lee?
I believe it's homecoming this weekend also. Did they change that? So it's going to be a busy weekend, a lot of people in town. Drive safely, watch out for the little kids running around.
Jeremy? I would like to thank everybody too tonight for the, coming out for the public hearing. Sometimes it's hard when you're sitting up here and nobody wants to come in and give their opinion. And it helps us make a decision, you know, what people see and what's going on. Sometimes we don't see what they see. And I think the main goal is, you know, the safety of the kids. And it's nice to see the public, a bus driver, the school working with the council, the school board, you know, getting a committee together, you know, to make decisions like that. So I just want to thank everybody again for all of that, and enjoy the weekend, and just watch the traffic and the kids.
And bundle up.
Yes.
Why? It's still.
Any comments, Mr. Carlson?
Just briefly, I wanted to wish Nikki Young congratulations and wish her well. She has been our Daily News correspondent since I've been here, and probably well before since I've been here. She's here at every meeting, and I think it's extremely important to have somebody from the Daily News here, because though we have public hearings and though we have everything on TV, sometimes people don't have the TV station, so she gets the word out with what is happening here at the council, and I appreciate and thank her for being here all the time. Good luck.
Good luck, Nikki. Mr. Anderson?
I also want to thank Nikki. I think you did a great job on explaining to people what we've done here. Mr. Anderson has a big seat to fill, Jim Anderson, filling your seat. So hopefully we'll get somebody good. Thanks. Thank you.
Mary, Trish? If not, all right, I need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Thank you, ladies.
Meeting adjourned.
Oh, yeah, good for this.